Greetings of peace and thanks for tuning in. May the peace and blessings of Allah be with you. So in these videos we prepare for the coming of Imam Mahdi as well as the second coming of Jesus, peace and blessings be upon them, also known as the Mashiachs. So I think it's very vital to understand the nature of our reality, understand spiritual concepts for us to grow spiritually in this world. Now I titled this video as a metaphor, we live within a virtual reality, within a virtual reality, within a virtual reality, is to give us deeper insights on how Allah creates our reality and how things operate. And obviously this will help us in preparation and the coming of Imam Mahdi, as well as second coming of Jesus, peace and blessings be upon them. And I'll be using Quran verses to help us understand this on a deeper level. So just to give a brief overview of the higher soul, if you want more detail you can watch my previous video mentioned the greater reality. Now we live hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes here on earth, all happening simultaneously, which means they're all occurring at once. Now there's different levels to these incarnations, from lower to mid-level to very advanced incarnations. Obviously the majority and bulk of our lifetimes are in the lower to mid-level incarnations, where they're more body operated, where the spirit sort of is just there for the ride and the body is more in control. But as the higher soul gains more and more experience, the spirit starts to overcome the body and overcoming the dunya, the worldly life, and exerts more of the spirit and gains knowledge and experience, which creates a higher light within the soul, a higher knowledge within the soul. So, and all these, you're very advanced, could be spread across the time periods of humans here on Earth. So there's no order of them within our timeline. So your very advanced could be scattered throughout the time periods of Earth, just as your other level of incarnations from low to mid-level to very advanced are scattered in different time periods as they're all occurring simultaneously. So, as a metaphor, we live in a virtual reality within a virtual reality within a virtual reality. The creation of you is like one single soul, as Allah says in chapter 31, verse 28. The creation of you all and your resurrection for Him is like one single soul. So this is sort of depicted here. A lot of information that I get from the hereafter is from people who are proficient in astral travel. I've had my own personal astral travel experiences, but just a few. For the most famous astral traveler that I know is Robert Monroe. He's written several books. He's mapped out the areas that he's traveled in the astral realms and given a lot of his experiences and such. So some of the people have seen the higher soul. They've astral traveled to the fifth, sixth density where the higher souls reside. And when I say we live in a virtual reality within a virtual reality within a virtual reality, is that this third density world, the 3D world that we live in, is like a virtual reality as a metaphor. And we live in a virtual reality within a virtual reality within a virtual reality, is that this is a virtual reality, so to speak, as a metaphor. And as we human beings can create computer games and virtual reality headsets, so it's like a virtual reality within a virtual reality. We dream at night, which is another example of another virtual reality. When we move into the hereafter, it's like another virtual reality, but at a higher resolution. From even my experiences of having out-of-body experiences, it's just like a higher level of virtual reality. Going the hellfire is another virtual reality metaphor. The paradise, which has different levels to it, are different levels of virtual reality for the soul to experience and to grow from and to perfect the light of Allah. So when I say we live in a virtual reality within a virtual reality within a virtual reality, even when the higher soul is complete in its experiences and moves on to higher levels of creational resolution, it'll be a different level of virtual reality. So how many virtual realities that Allah has created within creation, or creations within creations, only Allah knows. So I just want to give that as a foreword. So I've just made this up, CPS, which is creation per second, which Allah creates. And there's FPS, frames per second, a virtual reality within a virtual reality humans create. So we create videos, we create video games, we create visual realities within this virtual reality, and it's based on frames per second. Okay, frames per second, or Allah creates the creation per seconds, and we here as human beings, we can create virtual realities and stuff which are frames per second. So to give you an example of this, we'll just show the basis of how Allah creates the creation. We'll read this first here. So Allah says in chapter 10 verse 4 in the Quran, He it is who originates the creation. So Allah originates the creation, then He reproduces it so that He may justly reward those who believe and do deeds of righteousness. In chapter 55 verse 29 in the Quran, all the rational beings that are in the heavens and on the earth do beg of Him. Every moment He manifests Himself in a new state of glory. So Allah originates the creation, then He's reproducing it. Okay, and to give you an example of this, we'll go to a flip book. Okay, so this is pages per second, or if you look at the screen, you can go here and adjust. You can go here and adjust your frames per second, your quality. So frames per second, you can increase that to give you an idea of how the creation operates. So we'll go look at this. So this is how the creation operates roughly. Frames creation per second. Okay, so we get the idea of frames per second. So Allah originates the creation, then He reproduces it as CPS, creations per second, so that He may justly reward those who believe and do deeds of righteousness. Okay, so since Allah originates the creation, He has full knowledge of the creation. So as Allah says in chapter 57 verse 3 in the Quran, He is the very first, where there is nothing before Him, and the last, there will be nothing after Him. And when nothing remains, He will remain. He is a supreme being, subordinate to no one. And whereas He comprehends everything, He is incomprehensible, and He has full knowledge of everything. So since Allah originates the creation, He has the full knowledge of everything from the beginning of time, or the beginning of creation, to the end of creation. So Allah has full knowledge. And this is how He renders the creation. So renders, to make, one of the meanings of render is to make be. So Allah renders the creation. So He's constantly recreating, reproducing the creation every moment. How fast per second, we don't know. We can guess on how fast Allah is recreating the creation, and it could vary between different parts of creation. As I said, we live in a virtual reality within a virtual reality within a virtual reality. So particles in creation are rendered in probabilities and not in physics or patterns. So since Allah is recreating the creation, there is no actual physics or patterns that follow the creation. So you can never follow a pattern or physics to predetermine what is going to happen. They all are in probabilities through the law of cause and effect. So Allah says in chapter 2, verse 217 in the Quran, God is the wonderful originator without depending upon any matter or pattern of the heavens and the earth. And when He issues you a decree, He says to it be, and it becomes to be. So Allah says be, and it comes to be, and it happens. So Allah is constantly, every moment, creation per second, is recreating the creation every moment. So it doesn't follow any particular pattern or physics. Okay, as we can give as an example here. So as an example, in the Quran, Allah talks about when Abraham, when he destroyed the idols of these people, they wanted to throw him in the fire. So in chapter 21, verse 61 through 70 in the Quran, we said, "O fire, be you a means of coolness and safety for Abraham. They intended a mistreatment of him, but we made them the worst losers, and they could not carry their evil designs of burning him." So according to physics and patterns, fire burns. But in the case of Abraham, his people threw him into the fire because he destroyed their idols. But Allah told the fire not to be cool for Abraham. So this is what I mean that, as I say here, particles in creation are rendered, so they're made into being by Allah in probabilities, but not based on physics or patterns. Because Allah can change anything moment to moment, depending on our actions and deeds and what we're thinking in our minds, can change the course of reality, of these virtual realities, so to speak, in a metaphorically way of speaking. And probabilities. So if I kick a ball 100 times into the net from the same position, with the same technique, with the same power, the ball will roughly go into the same area in the net, because I'm keeping all the variables quite the same. So the ball is not going to go exactly in the same spot every time because they have different probabilities. It might go a little bit faster one time, might go a little bit slower, might swing to the left, the wind might blow it this way a little bit. So we live in a cause and effect, where these particles in this virtual reality, so to speak, this creation, will move in probabilities and not in a matter of fact of patterns or actual physics. So Allah creates gravity and stuff like that, but these are not set in stone. These are not a matter-of-fact pattern. These are always being recreated every moment. Okay, to give you an understanding of that. So consciousness receives data by experience and computes back into the creation through the law of cause and effect. So Allah says in chapter 5, verse 105, "O you who believe, take care of yourselves, for upon you is the responsibility of your own selves. He who has gone astray can do you no harm, provided you are rightly guided." And in chapter 13, verse 11 in the Quran, "Verily, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they first change their ways and their minds." So this is a cause and effect universe, where we receive data through the experience of this virtual world, so to speak, in a metaphorically way of speaking, and we compute back into the creation through our actions and thoughts, and then Allah will change the condition of the reality depending on our actions and our thoughts and our minds. So it's like a loop, experimental loop. So if we're stuck in a certain way of thinking, a certain way of acting, then we'll repeat the same mistakes over and over again until we learn them and grow from them. Okay, and the purpose of creation is to perfect Allah's light, as Allah says in chapter 9, verse 32. They seek to put out the light of Allah with the breath of their mouths, but Allah disdains every other thing save that He will perfect His light, however much the disbelievers may consider it hard. So the purpose of the virtual worlds is to perfect Allah's light. Hence, Imam Mahdi transforms the world from injustice to justice by perfecting Allah's light. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you take Allah's shield, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be with you.